welcome to On Track GP. We've got a lot to get through and catch up on from a busy Monaco weekend, but we do head into the Spanish Grand Prix. It is the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. Give you some stats about it before
What will the set look like that day? I'm very intrigued because I like Barcelona, so I want to know.
Well, I don't know. Matisse is here, by the way. What they got planned for us? It is 2.894 miles in length. It's got 14 turns. It's known for the long, fast bend at turn 3, and it's 1.047 metres long, pit straight. The first Grand Prix here was held in 1991. It's been on the calendar ever since. It's also the scene of Max Verstappen's first F1 win in his race, in his racing career with Red Bull in 2016. What happened there was that the two Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg collided on the opening lap, and that was, you know, we never looked back, eh?
Yeah,
we never looked back. Also the scene of Pastor Maldonado's epic win in 2012. Most recent win for Williams, and Fernando Alonso, his last F1 win to date in 2013. This year we'll see the removal of the chicane at the final corner, marking the first time since 2006 that F1 has raced at the circuit without the chicane.
Damn.
So there's all the stats out the way.
Some fun memories there. That Mercedes crash definitely stands out massively. Good wheel-to-wheel racing from those two. Didn't really like each other. Lots of cap throwing
Iconic
in behind the scenes as well when races were over. Yeah, so we need more of that this season from Checo. I need to see some elbows out.
Well, speaking of Checo, let's have a little recap, shall we, of what happened in Monaco. It was another win for Max Verstappen. It sees him move 39 points clear at the top of the championship. It was a terrible weekend for his teammate Sergio Perez. Everything went wrong. I mean, he crashed out in Q1 of qualifying. Numerous incidents throughout the race. He finished in 16th. There was a lot of pitting going on. I think he ended up pitting 3 or 4 times. It was just a really poor race. And I think that, you know, when you look back at maybe the few weeks prior, we were saying that there could be something here in terms of a battle between the two Red Bulls. It hasn't really panned out that way. And on a street circuit in Monaco, you would just think that Checo would do better, wouldn't you? Yeah,
I think Checo's in some serious trouble now. In terms of this championship, I've not lost all hope, but I am getting to the point where I'm like, yeah, Max is probably going to clean up in the European part of the kind of calendar now, because we all knew that Checo needed to kind of dominate the early stages. And he was leading, he was pole, and he still let, you know, previously he was pole, and he still let Max catch up and overtake him in Miami, I think it was. So from the moment that happened, I was like, yeah, Max is going to clean up here. And we know that Monaco is just ridiculous. You can't overtake, there's no space. And Max is never going to throw it away, even with the conditions changing and people being on wrong tyre compounds and a little bit of drama maybe, but listen, for Max, there is no drama. He's experienced. He's won there before. He was always going to win that race. As soon as I saw qualifying, I saw Max was pole, I said, race is done. We know who's going to win. It's very rare that you go to Monaco and on that street circuit that someone doesn't finish first. Unless you're Leclerc.
Unless you're Leclerc. Unless you completely bin it in the wall. Like if you start on pole, you're most likely going to finish that race on pole. And I would say just on Max, I know I give him a lot of credit, and obviously there is some criticism that comes from the other side of the couch. But overall, I mean, you have to just commend him. Like you look at him in qualifying, you know, that final sector was just unbelievable. It just shows you what an incredibly skilled driver he is, if you didn't already know. And there were times on this, you know, throughout this weekend where he clipped the wall, you know, the rain came, but he was just so confident. He's so in control of that car. And I think that just shows the difference in terms of the driving between himself and Checo. The levels between maybe having complete control of the car and being at one with the car. And I just think Max is just such a brilliant example of that. He could be up there with one of the greatest of all time.
The gap between Verstappen and Checo in terms of quality reminds me of the gap between Hamilton and Rosberg. Like Rosberg had to sacrifice his entire life, put it all on hold. He spoke about it kind of after, you know, it was all said and done and he got that title. And that is what Checo would almost have to do to stand a chance. That's just to stand a chance. And maybe things would have to go your way a little bit as well. Maybe Verstappen would have to be having a couple of off days. Like that's what it takes to beat Verstappen, because he is a generational driver. And even with the other young drivers, you know, coming through, we see Lando Norris, hopefully one day will be competing, George Russell. They're still going to find it very difficult to compete with Verstappen unless Verstappen weakens his car. Like, it's going to take something like Verstappen maybe getting bored or Red Bull messing up one year.
Strategically, yeah.
Yeah, and then maybe then other people stand a chance, because right now he's too dominant in that car. It's too easy.
Yeah, he is. Helmut Marko said after that race in Monaco that Perez's mistakes were enough for the rest of the season, so that's quite a firm hand that they're taking with it. He also suggested that they're going to try something new in Spain. They are one of the few teams that are rumoured to be bringing in upgrades to the new RB19. He wouldn't give any specifics as to what they are, but I mean, how can you upgrade a car that is already perfect?
Oh, this should be allowed. This shouldn't even be allowed.
What, like seriously? Like, what more can you do to this car? But also, why would you upgrade something that doesn't need upgrading? This could backfire.
Because they are greedy as hell.
What? This could backfire. This could. Why change something that's not broken?
I personally don't understand why they need to upgrade. Like, at least. Listen, it's Red Bull. They're competing against themselves at this point. They probably take great joy in seeing how clear they are and how far down the road they are compared to their competitors.
They just want to tinker now.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if everybody else is bringing up upgrades, in terms of the, Ferrari, the Mercedes, Aston Martin, if everyone's bringing upgrades, I guess Red Bull are just covering themselves. They're doing what they should do, which is they keep striving to be better. You compete against yourself in this sport sometimes, even as a driver as well. If you're clear down the road, you do start getting into that mentality of setting best times and trying to just keep pace with what you've done previously, and you're going up against yourself. That's the mentality. That's how you remain at the top. So what Red Bull are doing is they're just being very, very professional about this, and it's a shame. It's a massive shame.
It's a shame for you. It's not so much a shame.
Because I'd love it if they just kind of put the handbrake on and just made this a little bit more competitive and put the field together a little bit, but no.
Okay, well, let's look at Aston Martin, because they are also rumoured to be bringing in some upgrades this weekend. It's projected to bring an advantage of 0.2 of a second per lap. They had another strong weekend, especially Alonso did in general. However, they did have a big blunder. Their team's weather radar system in Monaco clearly wasn't working as accurately as the others, because it saw them put the medium tyres on Alonso's car in the wet, and then they had to pit again the next lap. And I was saying to you before we started, and anyone who watched that race knew, I mean, he was I think it was about 7-8 seconds or 9 seconds behind Max at that point prior to the pit stop. And I just think that had they not have done what they did, and if they just gone on the inters straight away, then it could have just been so much better. They could have made up time, and it could have been a bit of a grandstand finish, because he had the ability to get there and be close within Max had they not have messed up on the strategy. So if I was Alonso, of course you're happy with being P2. I think that's his first P2 since 2014. But you're thinking, well, that's a big issue. A big issue for us.
No, 100%. And Alonso's at that point now where I'm looking at the standings, and he could compete with Perez.
I think it's 12 points behind.
He's not far.
Behind Perez.
He's only 12 points behind. He could compete for second in the drivers' championship. So it's one of those things where if he's going to do that, strategy is going to have to be absolutely on point, because that Red Bull is still the strongest car, and clearly is the strongest car on grid. So you'd expect Perez to get it to the end, but I think with Alonso, he's just such a quality driver, and there was a bit of a risk taken there, because of course I think some of the track was wet and some of it was dry, so that kind of made that more interesting in terms of what tyre compound to go with. Do you take the risk and just go through the wet patch with the mediums, or do you want to go to intermediates?
I think they were trying to basically outsmart the Red Bulls, and I don't think that they thought that the Red Bulls would be on the mediums for as long as they were. And I think that's the thing. I think you just have to focus on your own strategy sometimes, rather than worrying about what other teams are doing. And then I think that, whatever pans out, pans out. But I think keeping an eye on the Red Bulls, whether or not they thought they could win that race or not, is a different thing. But I just think if you focus on your own strategy and do what's best for you, then you won't be in the situation where you then have to rectify the issue and the problem that you made.
No, it's true. It's true.
Just my thoughts on it. Lance Stroll, he had a weekend to forget, though. Numerous incidents throughout the race. He eventually crashed out and he retired. Called in by the FIA during qualifying. It was noted by the stewards for failing to be weighed when asked to be weighed. He also hit one of the Haas cars in the final corner of the race. It was just a poor weekend.
Just
poor weekend overall.
A weekend to forget for him. I think just quickly move on to Barcelona. He's gonna wanna rectify that in Barcelona, because as much as we know the dynamic between him and Alonso is basically father and son, and obviously he has his father own the whole team, so he's not really under maybe
father, son and uncle.
He's not under immense pressure. It's a brilliant family at Aston Martin. He's not under immense pressure. I think from a competitive side, as much as the dynamics is clear between him and Alonso, who calls the shots in terms of who's the better driver, and almost kind of putting that arm around him and saying, listen, this is how you do this, and kind of improving him. There is that kind of relationship. From a competitive standpoint, to be that far off Alonso constantly is.
I think we have given him praise, though. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
we have,
anyone can have a bad week, a dodgy race, but I think that he has definitely improved this season under the guidance of Alonso.
He's not a liability in that team.
No, he's not a Latifi.
No.
As much as you love Latifi.
No, he's not a Latifi. However, I do think, and I've said it before, I think long-term Aston Martin, if they're to be at the top, he has to get into those podium positions and he has to get closer to Alonso. Right now, he's doing a good job, but that's not going to be good enough if you're going up against Red Bull long-term, if you're going up against Ferrari and Mercedes long-term. So he has to start getting in those fights a lot more often with the Ferraris and with the Mercedes and getting in there and kind of elbows out and splitting points, because 6th, 7th is not really Aston Martin. That's not what they're trying to go for. They were demanding when the wind's coming from not so long ago.
Okay, well, it is Alonso's home race in Barcelona. It's the scene of his last F1 win, as we mentioned earlier. That's 10 years ago. He's looking for win number 33, and he's conveniently going to be in garage number 33 on the Spanish circuit. So who knows? He got 4th in Baku, 3rd in Miami, 2nd in Monaco. Could it be this weekend that he takes pole?
No.
Okay. Just thought we'd put the question out there.
Nah.
It's a no. It's a no. But hey ho, anything. You'll be happy with
I would love to be able to tell you that Max isn't probably going to wrap this one, but hey.
Who knows? Right, moving on to Mercedes. They did look to be on the up with their new upgrades in Monaco. They couldn't really get a proper clear picture of it, though, on a track like that.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be the real test to see how those upgrades worked.
Yeah, I need upgrades badly from Mercedes, because for me, when I'm looking at Mercedes at the moment, it's kind of just, it's a shadow of their former self. Like, the finishes were nice in Monaco. It wasn't a disgrace, but it's not what we expect, especially with Lewis Hamilton's kind of time running down on the clock. I need to see upgrades, and I need to see them back looking like they can challenge. Not this season. Clearly this season they're way off. They're not going to be picking up any sort of championship in constructors or drivers, but I need to see signs that say next season they are actually fighting alongside Red Bull, and that work starts now. And I think, especially last season, only seeing George win a race and Hamilton not, I need a couple of wins as well, just to get the confidence going again for the team, and just to once again kind of show that they're on the mend. If these upgrades don't work and I don't see serious improvements from Mercedes, I'm going to be pretty worried for the future of Hamilton at Mercedes a little bit, because there's been talk of like Ferrari, and maybe it won't happen because he's got a lot of loyalty in Mercedes. He's got a lot of ties to Mercedes behind the scenes, not just in front of the camera. But we need that championship. We need to at least try and get that championship.
We need to try and win some races. Focus on where you're
at. It's true, we do. We walk one step at a time.
Yeah, stop running before you're walking. You need to just crawl first. Just speaking about those upgrades, they have apparently brought a positive impact. Lewis has said that he is happy with the new upgrades. He said he was enjoying driving the car throughout the weekend. But Toto Wolff did kind of counteract that and said that the rear of the car is still really nasty. And it is something that the team are going to keep focusing on to try and improve over the coming race weekend. So it's going to be a real test, but on a permanent circuit this weekend. So let's see the difference in this car.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Then we can judge it. We can judge it next week.
I think on the simulator they were saying that it was showing good signs, but they're keeping it kind of coy, and I don't.
Just in case it doesn't work out.
With great confidence, I want them to be like, yeah, this is brilliant.
Yeah, a very good weekend for the Alpines, especially Esteban Ocon. He finished P3. He followed a penalty after qualifying for Charles Leclerc, but he maintained the position to take his first podium since a win in Hungary 2 years ago. Gasly also showing good progress for the team. He finished in 7th, and they had a really rocky start to the season. I think it was after Miami. They were getting a lot of criticism, but
their own CEO, I think.
Yeah, it was that. Yeah, their own CEO was giving them a lot of criticism. But they, this is what you want to see, and it's competitive. It's really competitive.
So happy to see Ocon on podium.
He deserved it.
Yeah, he deserves it, and it's nice to see just someone fresh on podium there, because we've spoken about it before, many previews. The fight between the top 4 teams is relentless. That's 8 drivers, so there's just no space, and it's like, we've had seasons before where we've seen the shocks and a couple of wins, like Gasly winning, and those are some of the best races, because that's unpredictable. That's something that nobody can see coming. And to see Ocon on there, it just gives a little bit of relief to the rest of the grid that, listen, you can achieve something this season. Even though Aston Martin have leapfrogged Alpine and they've gone and taken up more spots, you can still get a couple of little results here and there.
Well, it's important for them in that midfield battle, isn't it? Because there was so much that went on in the summer with Zach Brown and Otmar and all of that going on, you know, Piastri, a lot of drama with that midfield. And, you know, they've got a really good team going on there. I think the partnership of Ocon and Gasly works really well. It's an all-French outfit. We have spoken about that before, how, you know, it's really appealing to, obviously, the French market. But I really like what they've got going on there. And I think that, you know, it's taken a little bit of time. They've had their issues. But, you know, I'm happy for him. Really. I'm really happy to see him get P3. And let's see, maybe they can be best of the rest.
Yeah, and it is huge for that midfield fight, like you said, because what a podium is probably worth 3 solid races. So you've just bought yourself a lot of time there.
A little bit of breathing space.
Yeah, a little bit of breathing room. So, yeah, it's good to see.
Yeah, and the car did show some solid pace as well. We'll see if that carries over to Barcelona. Ferrari. We say this every week at the minute. It's a very poor weekend for Ferrari. I mean, Sainz crashed in free practice too. Leclerc was handed a penalty after qualifying for impeding Lando. He dropped from 3rd to 6th on the grid. You know, if you're in Monaco, you can't drop places because you can barely get them back. Sainz looked under pressure all weekend, had numerous mistakes throughout the race. I will say in his defence, because I do love to defend Sainz, but it wasn't just him. There was a few mistakes from him, but at the same time, strategy did really cost them, because at one point when he came into pit, he was just behind Ocon. And I think
he was going crazy about that.
He was going crazy. But I don't know if this was with the front wing or not, but they were so slow on it and it cost him so much time. And he came out and he was just behind Ocon again. And I think that was part of the problem. He did slide off in the wet, but lots of others did. He did touch Ocon as well in that opening stage. He went on to finish 8th. But we're seeing aggression from Sainz. And I think from looking at the two cars, I would argue that maybe Sainz has got a bit more in that car than Leclerc does.
It's tough to judge because, like, Leclerc as well this season, at times there's been a car failure at one point. There's been a couple strategy issues. I am easing up on Sainz, but maybe that is because Ferrari as a team are just so disappointing overall in terms of how they're managing situations. They're getting a lot wrong. And we said this last season as well. So for me, when I look at Ferrari, I just think to myself, I mean, Joe's not with us today. You know, people are stressed out. The jacket there's getting worn. For Ferrari, if they're not careful, Alpine might, as the season progresses, they might start to cause them problems.
I don't even look at Alpine. I look at them as someone like Alonso and the Astons replacing Ferrari.
Could do. Easily, and this is where Stroll comes into it.
You'd say they're far more competitive at the moment.
Alonso's doing his job. Alonso's been consistent all season in terms of challenging those Ferraris and actually overtaking those Ferraris and putting Aston Martin points-wise where they'd want to be behind the Red Bulls. It's just, if Stroll can make that jump that I was talking about earlier, that's what's going to cost the Ferraris in this battle. But I'm really disappointed with the Ferraris again because they've got 2 good drivers. The pace is there with Leclerc especially. He's a big risk taker, as we've seen previously with some of the incidences. And like you said, Sainz was very aggressive. But the strategy's not mirroring and it's costing them. So I don't know with Ferrari. I'm starting to think that Ferrari are going to have a long season. I don't know if they're going to actually bring this back.
Well, I think this is a big one as well. Obviously, Carlos Sainz, he is a home Grand Prix for him, being Spanish. Ferrari are going to have upgrades to the rear suspension this weekend in Barcelona. They had to put it off after Emilia Romagna that was cancelled. So again, it's going to be a real interesting weekend because we've got all these upgrades that have come to these different cars. We've been on street circuits for such a long time now, so to be on a permanent circuit, we can finally see these cars in action. I'm excited.
It's the upgrades between Ferrari versus Mercedes, isn't it? Basically, this is the weekend where we really see what's going to happen, because when I'm looking at the standings, Hamilton and Russell are both ahead of Leclerc and Sainz. So I did not expect this.
Big weekend.
I did not expect that at all.
I don't think anyone else would have either. Right, moving on, McLaren. It was a good weekend for McLaren. Norris qualified 9th. He hit the barriers in Q2. Team worked very quickly in Q3 to repair the damage. It was so quick, actually. I couldn't believe they actually managed to get that done in time. And getting back out on the track to set a lap, and he finished 9th in the race. Piastri also had a good race, moved up to P10, took the final point.
Really good.
And he qualified outside of the top 10 as well, so that was really good work from him. Special livery for the Monaco weekend. Fusing their liveries together from their first win at Monaco in 1984, their Indy 500 win in 1974 and their Le Mans win in 1995. They're also going to use the same livery in Spain. from where they were at the beginning of the season, it looked like the car was absolutely hopeless. It really did. But they seem to just be building bit by bit. And they've
bit of momentum.
Yeah, a little bit of momentum. And Piastri seems to be the best of the rest in terms of the rookies.
Really good stability from them to get in the top 10, and they followed that up with the race in, I think, Miami, where was there loads of crashes in that race? Was it the race?
Miami, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah. So that's really good stability. Was it Miami?
Yeah, I think, was it Miami or was it Melbourne?
I think it might have been Melbourne.
Melbourne was when we had carnage.
Yeah, that was the race where they got a double. But really good stability from them, and it's good to see because they're a massive team. I think with Piastri, definitely best of the rookies. I mean, De Vries is really struggling. We've spoken about that with Richard in the last preview, and then obviously Sargent.
Yeah.
What can really Sargent maybe do in that Williams? It's difficult for him. It's not the greatest car as well. So I think with McLaren, really happy for them. Solid in the top 10, and whether they can go higher than this, I don't know. It's a difficult one because the competition only gets more fierce. I think when you're dealing with Alfa Romeos and you're dealing with Williams and you're dealing with AlphaTauri, there is scope for improvement.
The McLarens thought that they would be the top end of that mid-table, but now you see the Alpine, you see Aston, you see,
and it's like everybody ahead of them's coming with upgrades.
Exactly.
So can they really go any higher? I don't know. I think this might be kind of where they cap off, but it's not the worst place to cap off because, like you said, where we saw them at the start of the season was atrocious. Like they were probably the worst team in terms of expectations and what they were actually doing. So I'm happy to see some stability from them.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with them over the course of the season. They have also announced the signing of former Red Bull chief engineer Rob Marshall, who they hope will further consolidate our ability to establish the highest technical standards at McLaren. He will start on January the 1st.
Okay.
So
we'll see.
Still a long way away.
Yeah.
But
long way away.
Long way away. This is something for next season.
Yeah.
AlphaTauri, Yuki Tsunoda showed great pace once again throughout the weekend, finishing sessions in the top 10 regularly, held on to 9th throughout the race, which was good, another point in the bag. He did have a spin in wet conditions. It took him out of the points to 15th. Yeah.
Tsunoda's had a good season for me, so I will kind of just...
He's matured.
He's matured, exactly. And I think that race I put it down as just maybe being a little bit unlucky. It was
everyone was spinning.
Yeah, everyone was spinning. There was people crashing into barriers. There was people clipping each other. It was a bit of a messy race with those conditions. So I think he'll just move from that quickly. He's made himself very clear as the head driver in that team, rightly so. He's been a bit unlucky this season as well. I think he could have a lot more points than he does. So yeah, I think with Tsunoda, really good start to the season from him. Shouldn't really drop off any confidence after what just happened. Just bounce back. Hopefully try and get himself into the points. For Tsunoda, it's all about just trying to just scrape points here and there. If there is a big dramatic race where a lot of people crash out, then go where the wind takes you. But normal race, just try and get 1 point.
Just keep it competitive in that sense for them in that back end of the midfield.
Yeah.
He did say after the race that he had a lingering brake problem throughout the weekend, and it got worse as the wet conditions continued. So he took B12 at the checkered flag. So again, not a great weekend, but.
Not great, but that can happen at AlphaTauri.
Yeah, it can happen. It's not something that we're like shocked about.
No, definitely not.
Williams, both Albon and Sargent, they both... Oh my God, I can't talk. Let's start that again. Williams, both Albon and Sargent, they showed solid pace throughout the weekend in Monaco, but neither would score any points. They ended the race in 14th and 18th. At one point, they were actually doing quite well, and I don't really know what happened there. Sargent suffered a spin at the hairpin in the wet. He was lucky to not have hit the barriers. Williams, they have announced a competition over the weekend for fans to vote on one of 4 special golf-inspired liveries, on which the winning vote will be used as livery in the upcoming Singapore, Japanese and Qatar Grand Prix later in the season. So that's basically just vibes.
Yeah, basically. Just vibes.
They're just here for pure vibes.
But with the Barcelona track, and when we were speaking about it last week as well, Richard was saying that a lot of these drivers, Barcelona's a track that they've almost done so many times that they're bored of it. Like they've exhausted in terms of the European circuits, this is the one that they've done so many times. So for the rookies, I'm expecting a little bit of experience
But how well can they do?
Well, that's true. How well can they do? I think all they
can... P10, P9?
Nah, all they can do is be competitive. But I'm expecting the grid to be a little bit more competitive and a little bit more congested and not so... I don't expect to see anybody lingering at the back at a circuit like this because everybody's raced here quite a few times, whether it be through the divisions, F2, etc. So I think for me, Sargent, just try and be competitive. What can you really do in a Williams like?
I think they've actually looked a little bit more competitive at the minute.
They have, but they can't go any further than being just competitive. Like they can't.
No, but
It's sad because they're a huge team.
They're a huge team. They're a historic
I remember when they
team.
used to be competing for podiums. Bottas, Massa.
But that's the
Those
thing.
days are gone.
They need the type of investment that brings with a Red Bull or a Mercedes or a Ferrari. I mean, Ferrari still can't get it right. Neither can Mercedes. With all that money, but it needs something to bring Williams back to where they are. But I don't know what can do that, because if they're bought by a conglomerate like an Audi or something like that, then then they're not Williams anymore. Yeah,
no, it's true. Yeah,
and of course, Audi are buying Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, one of the most historic teams on the grid, and just like I said, they're just nowhere near where I always remembered them.
It's sad.
It is sad, I think, but hopefully one day they'll get back up there.
One day.
It's a long way to go.
Long way to go. Maybe in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Haas. It was a very difficult race for Haas. It's 150th Grand Prix Monaco. Both cars failing to get out of Q1, scoring points. Magnussen, he retired from the race in the late stages. He has called on his team, though, to help improve the team, saying they must target a turn of form similar to Aston Martin this year, should they want to achieve any future success.
Yeah. Big ask. Big ask, I must say. What Aston Martin have done is not normal for a lot of teams. I think, listen, it's fair to demand that. It's fair to ask for that, because you do want to see ambition from the team. But I think you kind of have to remember where Haas has come from as well. Like, Haas have come from back of the grid, struggling, shocking results.
Also, they don't have the same money that Aston have.
Not even close. Yeah, exactly. We remember the phone calls.
Remember the phone calls. Hi, Gene. Hi, Gene. I've crashed again.
Yeah.
Hi, Gene.
Yeah.
And then not only that, it's like, do you remember who was the driver, the Russian driver? Mazepin.
Yeah.
They only had Mazepin because they needed the sponsor.
Yeah.
They needed the dad.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then obviously everything else happened.
And then Schumacher as well for maybe...
Schumacher.
Yeah, exactly, for the branding. So
it's a bit harsh for Magnussen.
I think it's a bit harsh. I think it's a little bit maybe out of touch. But I get it. Every single racer wants to be ambitious. They want to see improvements.
I wouldn't say his driving was the best this weekend.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So that maybe maybe fix that first before you talk.
Glass houses don't throw stones.
But I think Haas have come a long way, and they've got a good driver lineup. I think it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot longer than what we've seen from Aston Martin for them to get up to that position.
One thing's for sure, they're not going to finish bottom.
No,
Williams
exactly,
will finish
and that is good to see for Haas.
Yes,
nice
exactly.
Team.
Funnily enough, we've got some interesting things here, which does involve Haas as we head into Alfa Romeo. It was a quiet weekend. I feel like we never talk about Alfa Romeo ever.
We don't. It's actually quite funny.
Yeah, so we literally never talk about them. They are completely irrelevant, and I'm sorry if you are an Alfa Romeo fan, but we just never talk about them. And it's a shame, because you've got two good drivers. I mean, Valtteri Bottas is one of my favourite drivers. Yeah. And we just never talk about them.
I don't know why. They just never...
They're just irrelevant. Like, they never do anything.
Yeah.
At least like with AlphaTauri, you've got Yuki, who you don't know if he's going to just like be going off on one on the radio or just spinning it into the wall.
It's too calm over at Alfa Romeo.
It's just very calm, yeah. They both failed to score points. Bottas finished outside the points in P11. But this is quite interesting. There we go. I'll give you some flowers. It's interesting. Recent rumours have suggested that upon Alfa Romeo's title sponsorship ending with Sauber at the end of the year, the company who runs the team and the original name of the team, they are set to join Haas from 2024 as a potential title sponsor at the rumoured sum of 20 million per year.
Okay. I mean, I'm not familiar with the finances and if that's a great deal, but...
I would assume in F1 it's not.
Yeah, I'm not sure about, but
I'd assume
I pray for you. That is a good negotiation that you've done, because you need it. You definitely could. You could definitely need the money.
So, are we merging Alfa Romeo and Haas?
Sounds like it. I mean, if that's the case, for me, it's going to take maybe something like that to make those. But leaps.
My question is, they're meant to be taken over by. They're becoming Audi in 2026. So is this just a part-time thing that they can't be bothered to have Alfa Romeo and Haas anymore? They're just going to become one or the other?
Well, we say that Alfa Romeo is pretty irrelevant a lot, so maybe they're picking up on that.
Maybe they're like, we'll just like bunk in with Haas until Audi come in 26, and then we just go back and be like, hey,
we're back now.
We're back.
Maybe that will get the job done.
It is weird, F1, like how they just do that.
The amount of name changes there have been in F1 is so difficult to kind of like follow. Yeah, Racing Point. We had
Force India.
We had Renault as well. So many different name changes constantly.
A lot.
Sauber, it's just
What was AlphaTauri before? Toro Rosso.
That one was, I don't know why, but I can remember that one clearly, no problem. But I think that's because they're Red Bull's feeder team.
Well, yeah, so it's AlphaTauri.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they're Red Bull's feeder teams. So I was always able to kind of make that connection.
Yeah,
But some of
that's
the
like
other ones,
baby Red Bull.
Yeah, baby Red Bull. That's what I just call them.
Basically. Right, that is a recap and a preview for the Spanish Grand Prix. But what I want to know from you is who is going to be your P1, P2, P3, who's going to have a good qualifying, and who's going to be the disappointment of the weekend?
Well, Ferrari's not making top 3 again for me. I'm just going to leave them out of this. I'm going to go, even though it's Science's home Grand Prix, I'm going to go Verstappen, Alonso again, and I'm going to go George third. And I know I'd usually go with Hamilton.
I was going to say,
I'm going to go George just to keep things interesting, because the first 2 are a little bit predictable from me.
Okay. Disappointment? Disappointment
will go to Perez.
Again?
Yeah. I don't know what it is with Perez, but he's disappointing me right now. So I'm going to give him the disappointment. I really just want... When Perez did not win the race from pole, that was poor. That was really poor. And that was the moment I was just like, he hasn't got it. He hasn't got it. He's not gonna do this with Verstappen all season. He's just gonna fall into position of being the second driver at Red Bull and taking...
Well, if he doesn't do anything this weekend, it's most definitely done.
Oh, most definitely.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to go with the P1 Max, obviously. I'm going to go P2 Alonso, P3 Sainz. I feel like he's going to have a resurgence. He was really pissed off last week.
It's just dependent on upgrades, isn't it? It's Ferrari versus Mercedes for these upgrades. Aston Martin, of course, as well. So it's tough to see who's actually going to make that jump. It could be anyone. Disappointment of the weekend, I will go with Leclerc. Wow, he can't afford DNF. Just another DNF. He can't. Do you know what? If that happens, Joe's going to lose it. Yeah, literally. But science kind of maybe makes up for it a little bit. But yeah, let's see. That's bad. Let's see what happens. But obviously, put your prediction, guys, into the comment section and let us know what you think is going to happen this weekend ahead of the Barcelona Grand Prix. We also have this lovely... Oh, it's a bit heavy. PS5. PS5. So the way you can enter and the way you can win is you have to like, subscribe on YouTube and on Instagram. So make sure you go onto the On Track GP page on YouTube and on Instagram. Like the post, subscribe, follow as well. Most importantly, make sure you follow, and then you will be in with a chance of winning this PS5. There you go. But that is everything for this week. That's everything. I'm looking forward to it. Catch up with you over the weekend. Yeah, I'll be on this watch along. Wasn't on the last one, but we'll be on this one. So looking forward to it, and hopefully it's a great race, because I think we need another dramatic race. I'm not saying any crashes, but some safety cars, some little clips. We haven't had any safety cars for ages. Yeah, it feels like ages. I thought we were going to have a race. I really assumed in Monaco. We were going to have a red flag, but we didn't. So I need that, and then hopefully a little bit of a mixed pack. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to race not on a street track. I really am. Yeah. Good old-fashioned racing. Good old-fashioned racing. Some overtakes, hopefully. Let's see. Let's get that DRS involved. I haven't seen DRS for ages. Well, I think you guys don't need DRS. I think I just like it when they put the DRS on. Literally, maybe that's the upgrade. I mean, the car does practically fly, so maybe it will actually physically. Do you know what? Yeah, this will be the upgrade for Red Bull. Is the car actually flies? It actually flies and takes off. It doesn't race on the ground anymore. Basically. Yeah, that's what I want to see. It'd be like something out of Sonic and it just goes boom. But that is all for this week. So we will catch up with you over the weekend for all of our previews, reviews, and of course the main race on Sunday. Have a good week.